Yeah, I just went over the script this morning and I just kind of I took a few notes, or I kind of created a little flow chart of the characters just so I could, wrap my head around it.
Perfect.
Um Accessibility. But yeah, um do you think you could just kind of introduce what this is all about to the
Sure.
people?
Yeah, yeah. Can I introduce myself as well? Is that
Of
cool?
course.
Okay, awesome. Hey, my name is Joseph Daniel Rodriguez. I'm an animator primarily, is what I'd say, but I do VFX work. I make short films. I like to, create, if you will. And this project I have is called Autonomy. Um, and I've been working on it since 2015. So it's been a long time that I've been trying to refine it, and this is the year that I really want to kind of jump on it and finish it properly. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, but so the brief log line of this is it's an animated action adventure sci-fi, uh, young adult, right? And it's about a group of kids that are captured by crazy futuristic looking characters, and they're taken on board a massive spaceship called the Axiom, and they're scared, right? And it's tense situation, and so they're just trying to get off the spaceship. Like that's the the bare bones of the story. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and so the synopsis here. Do you want me to just get into that, or do you have some thoughts first, or?
No, I just want to say this seems like a really cool project and I'm glad to be a part of this process.
Well,
I
thanks, man.
think we can get into the synopsis here.
I'll briefly go over the summary here. I'll try and follow it verbatim, but might change it a bit. That's all right. But
Yeah.
okay. So the story, right? It follows a kid named Jacob, and he's kind of like a little brainiac. He likes to invent stuff, um, and he's showing his friends his latest invention, which is an artificial intelligence. He's named Ignis, um, and so one day he's hanging out with his friends and the robots with them. And they're all just chilling at a football field because they're kids. I don't know. And then the sky, like they see these lights in the sky, right? And then they start to descend down, and these kids are like, what is, like, are these UFOs? What's going on? They're confused, you know what I mean? um,
Yep.
and then it erupts into chaos, and like these ships start shooting lightning down on the football field, destroying it just like a show of force. It's crazy. The kids are scared. They're cornered. And then the ships land around them. They open up. These figures come out, and they're in black reflective armor. They got guns, weapons, right? Hold the kids at gunpoint, and then their leader comes out. It's called the Tecton, right? And he's like a Darth Vader type, just a scary, menacing figure, all in black, right? Um, and so he splits the group in half, knocks out Jacob. He takes one of the kids prisoner on his little spaceship, and the group is split onto the different spaceships because there's three of them in total, right?
Yeah.
And then they take off into the sky, and they head towards a massive floating structure. It's a spaceship, but I consider it more a structure than anything, right? And
Yeah.
it's called the Axiom. And so they land, they dock in it, uh, in separate chambers because the kids are not right next to each other, right? But the groups they exit. But before that, they both decide that they're going to try and escape because they're like, we don't know what's going on, but we're not going to stick around to find out, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so Jacob's group, they try to do that, and they have a rough go at it. And his little sister gets hurt in the process, and the ensuing little kerfuffle, the firefight, whatever. But the other group, there's three kids there. They do it successfully, right? They're able to overpower their captors, and they grab their guns, and then they are led through the Axiom by an unknown presence, right? They're just like something is guiding them towards a destination. They're hoping it's good, right? Um,
Yeah.
and then we cut back to the other kid who was taken by the Tecton. Ash is his name, and he is in a private chamber with the Tecton. And at this point, he is explaining to him what's going on, right? And so he takes off his helmet, whoosh, and you see, oh my God, it's an older version of Jacob, right?
Yeah.
And that's the point where, at least there's a twist to it where you find out that like this is Jacob from an alternate timeline, and that this big giant structure they're in is a giant time machine in and of itself from an alternate reality, right? Uh, and so at this point, like you understand that's going on, and so you see that like young Jacob and his group, they're running throughout the ship just trying to find some way to help his sister, and they come across a creepy machine in a locked off room, and they go inside, and he realizes that this is Ignis, but it's a much bigger machine. It's not the little portable version that he has running around with him, right?
Right. So in theory, Jacob and Ignis kind of grew up together, and now they're
Yes.
this dynamic, evil or morally, questionable time traveling duo.
Right, right. And that's where the script that you read ends at this point in the
Yeah.
narrative, right? So from this point on, the way I have it framed is that like this Ignis explains that it's technically trapped because it's a robot. It's like its functions are shut off. It can't do anything. So it's trapped here on the ship. And it tells Jacob, like, I'll heal your sister, I'll fix her if you set me free. Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so Jacob is like, tough choice, but I have no other options, of course. At the same time, the other three kids, Hannah, Marcus, and Nathan, right? They make their way to the Tecton, right? They find him. The path that they're following leads them to his chambers, right? Where he has Ash. And so firefight ensues right there. Really intense, right? And they corner him, and they're about to like, they unmask him, and so they're freaking out too because they're like, oh my God, it's Jacob, right? Uh, at the same time, of course, the young version of Jacob releases this AI. And when it does, it takes control of the ship. And these alternate timeline copies that are in the other room, they're like suspended in liquid animation, right?
Yeah.
It takes control of those and it like puppets them like zombified
Ooh,
versions.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so they break out and then they start attacking primarily the Tecton, but they're also just kind of attacking the kids too. Like they're, you know what I mean? They're going nuts.
So they just
Um,
become an environmental like threat,
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
like a neutral threat.
Right, right. Like they're going after everybody, trying to
Yeah.
wipe them all out. And so the Tecton runs away, he escapes. The kids manage to get out, and it's a crazy chase scene throughout the bowels of the tech or the Axiom, right? And Jacob also manages to escape this version of Ignis with his sister. She's like healed, right? She's now a little bit better. She can walk at least, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then they meet up, right? Once they meet up, they're like, what do we do? This is screwed. Like we're in, deep shit. Um, and then so they're like, we got to get out of here because that's still what we want to do. We just get off this crazy ass ship, but let's destroy it if we can, right? So they use his small little AI to find the ship's engine. They're like, let's just shut it down. And when they get there, they meet up again with the Tecton. He shows up and he's like, you're not destroying my ship. Another fight breaks out where he is fighting with Jacob. And then that machine is brought back that he references, right? Which I guess I haven't mentioned at this point.
No,
Uh,
are you just talking about Ignis or are you talking about a different machine?
a different one, because he in the script he says that he's making something that can change
Yeah,
reality.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that machine. So it's like they're wrestling around in the chamber where that thing is. So it's not like it goes off, but you get to see just a little bit of how it's morphing reality as they're fighting in its chamber, right?
What does that
But
look like? Morphing reality.
I don't know yet. Like visually, I got to figure that out. But it's going to be
Yeah.
wild if that makes sense. But they break it, right? So it blows up, and he's pissed because that's his thing, right? He's trying to make this thing. It's his goal. He's really mad. At that point, he's about to kill Jacob because he's like, "This is all your fault, right?"
Yeah.
And then Ignis jumps right back in with the clones. So it's even crazier. Final showdown. And he is specifically going after the Tecton. Like the other kids are just in the way. So they're being held at bay by the clones, right? They're fighting them. He's going after the Tecton specifically. And this is like the final climax of the film is this battle between the two. And the way I have it right now is that they get to a point in the battle where it's like, they're fighting, but they're also shouting and talking about what's going on, kind of, right? And he tells him like, this is all Ignis says, this is all your fault. Like I didn't want to do any of this.
Yeah.
And so it cuts back and you find out that in the original timeline where they grew up together, right? Uh, they grew up and they were friends, right? They're close. And Ignis did everything for Jacob in that future timeline. So they grew up and they changed the world, made crazy tech, right?
Yeah.
Uh, one of the last things they worked on was a time machine because Jacob always wanted to try that, you know? And so when they made the time machine, they were able to just look back into the past first. And Ignis saw what really happened. Because in the story, he tells him, like, or he tells the kids, I made Ignis, right? He's mine. He's my
Yeah.
tool to do my work. When they look back into the past, Ignis finds out that, like, Jacob didn't actually make him. He kind of discovered him. Like, he discovered
Oh,
that there was a sentient intelligence in his machine, kind of, that was already forming. Like, the kid is smart, but he's not smart enough to make an AI. He's just smart enough to know something's up, right?
yeah. He
Uh,
harnessed it.
yes, exactly. And so he kept drip feeding it information to a point where it could speak. And then, like, he started talking with it and he lied to it essentially and told it, I made you, you do what I want. Uh, and when Ignis realized that in the original timeline, he was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this isn't what I wanted to do. I'm done. And Jacob took that as like, oh, you're defying my rule. It's becoming Skynet. You know what I mean? So he's
Yeah.
like, let's shut it down. And then Ignis freaks out because he's like, my whole life has been a prison of sorts, and now you're actually going to imprison me? Like, no. And so they fought. You know what I mean? It was violent, um, which is that little cutaway from the beginning of the story, right?
Yeah.
Um, so he imprisoned him, and that's why Jacob was like, I'm going to build this machine based on what I know now about how time travel works. Going to build this machine to fix all of that and do it right. Now I can,
So what is
you know,
so just to interject,
yeah, yeah, by all means,
Tecton Jacob's ultimate goal
right.
um is to correct the past. What exactly does that mean? What is the version of the past that he wants?
Now he wants Jacob dead, like in the story, right? That's what
Right. At
his
the
thing
part you're
is.
at now.
Right, right. Is he wants him gone, but he still wants control over time and space, and that's what this machine is going to give him control, right?
Yeah.
But it's eliminating the need for that sentient life because now he realizes, right? Or I mean, he didn't before, but it's like he realizes now that Ignis is and always was a sentient being. It had life on its own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he didn't treat it as such. He treated it as a tool because that's how he saw it. Um, so that is the climax of the story. Is that's the final reveal, the final twist, if you will, right? Um, and the way I have it currently is just at that point he realizes his faults. That's the big moment where he finally looks around him. He's like, okay, all of this is my fault. Like I started this mess, if you will, or I kept perpetuating it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And
I
that would be
do.
the moment where he backs down and then he's like, just take me out, Ignis. Fine, do it, kill me. And Ignis is about to, and he can't. It's like, shit, I can't do it, man. Because they're they're friends, they're closer,
Yeah.
they're like brothers almost. Uh, and so the movie does kind of conclude at that point. They stop the fighting, if you will. Nobody has to like straight up die, if you will, but they come to that resolution. He apologizes, and Ignis realizes, like, okay, takes a step back. He's like, maybe I don't want to murder everybody. I never wanted to do that anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's where it kind of stands. They send the kids back home, and they're like, we're gonna go fix what we started, the mess we made, and they leave.
Okay.
Yeah. So at that
So
end, he. Oh, I'm sorry. Real
oh no,
quick.
no, you're good. Keep going. Keep going.
The very last scene, what I had in mind is that young Jacob is with the young Ignis. And they're like on the bleachers of that destroyed field, just kind of post processing all of this crazy shit. And Jacob is just like, "What do you want to do, man?" And the AI at the moment thinks really long and hard. He's just like, I don't know. I just don't want to do whatever we were gonna, And he's like, "Yeah, that's fair." And then it kind of just ends. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, that's what I was gonna say. I'm like, if young Jacob and young Ignis don't learn anything from this, then the story's kind of moot. So I'm glad you included that scene because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's funny how in your kind of third act, all of the agency gets passed on to the future versions of these characters,
Right. Yeah.
which made me kind of nervous at first. I'm like, all right, so the kids are just kind of sitting around. But the
Right,
fact that the
man.
kids get a window into one potential future and
Yes.
learn from it, I think is the crux of this whole thing.
Sick. Okay. And
So
that's good. I mean, if it's
no,
moving there, I appreciate
I
that.
definitely was picking that up, and I didn't realize. I mean, because where my version of the script left off,
Right.
I didn't get the full reveal of Jacob and Ignis's alternate history. So
Right. Right.
the fact that I was able to, and in my initial feedback on your script, I mentioned, yeah, there's like there could be more of a darkness in young Jacob, and there could be more of like a potential for darkness, and that could maybe be um like when Ash says like, oh, you don't deserve the power that you have, this is not you,
Yeah.
this is not, and I'm like, okay, so maybe there is a little a hint of darkness in Jacob, and then you kind of mention that, oh yeah, Jacob totally like has the power to abuse this AI, and I'm like, oh yeah, that checks out. And
Sick.
honestly, I would lean into that, which kind of
Okay.
brings me to the gist of my first bit of feedback,
Yes,
which
which was
was,
fantastic, by the way. Really did help.
thank you. I the first half up until like I think they get captured on page 18.
Right.
There's not a lot of serious stuff between the kids. You just have like 18 pages of meeting these kids, meeting their personalities, just bantering and bickering and bouncing
Right.
off each
Yeah.
other. And it's very fun and it's very like, you get to know them.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking you could use that time to really, like, first and foremost, show the central conflict between Jacob and Ignis. So if this whole thing is about, Jacob eventually realizing um, the flaws in his own mindset because he
Right.
witnessed the future, then why don't we see the flaws? Why, he's just this kind of this goofy kid for this whole
Yeah.
first half, and he's just doing inventions. I'm like, we could really no, let's show that he's kind of manipulative. Let's show that he's kind of and
Yeah.
and I know like when Hannah gets hurt and when his sister gets hurt, that's played off as like, oh, it's kind of a crisis and we need to fix this, and it's just sort of another story beat. But honestly, Jacob's willingness to let other people get hurt for his goals, like that really tracks, because think about
Mm,
him,
I like that.
the fact that Marcus got hurt, with his invention in the past, like all of
Right.
that to me says Jacob is willing to risk other people to accomplish his goals. He's willing to
Yes.
use other people as kind of lab rats.
Yes.
So you have a lot of subtext here, but it never really comes to a head. I mean, it does,
Perfect.
but also it doesn't, because
Of course. Yeah.
Marcus
Yeah.
never really takes it seriously that he got hurt by Jacob's inventions. Hannah never
Well,
really takes it seriously. They fix her and it's over.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and I wanted to do that. And I love that you're saying this because this makes, and I'd like to talk to you about this idea, right? Because this is in the draft before this one.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about taking it out, but what you're saying now lends more credence to it. It's the idea that when the three kids, Hannah, Marcus, Nathan, they go to attack the Tecton, right, and free Ash, they have that kerfuffle right before
Mm-hmm.
the alternate zombie drones wake up. In that firefight, that version of the Tecton kills his brother, shoots him. Nathan dies. And Marcus at that
Oh,
point in the story flips, man. Like he goes nuts and he's mad at Jacob, even the young version, because he's like, this is all your fault, you son of a bitch. Like, I'm going to kill you.
and
You know what I
oh yeah,
mean?
and then young Jacob is like, "What are you talking about? That was not me. That was the future."
Exactly.
And then Marcus is
Yes.
like, "No, no,
Yes.
this has always been you. You have
This has
always been
always
willing
been.
to risk other people for
Yes,
your
man.
goals." But
I love that.
that, I mean, if they're just going into free Ash, then that doesn't quite work, because
Okay.
that's not a personal Jacob goal. So
Right. Right.
what Jacob needs to overstep, and then somebody gets hurt.
Oh, I like
If
that.
it
Okay.
if because if Hannah just gets hurt because that's just what happens, then that doesn't mean
Right.
as much. But if Hannah gets hurt because of Jacob,
Yeah.
I think that's what you got to do there.
I like that.
Um, but honestly, I think it's better if Marcus. I mean, if Nathan gets hurt or dies, I like
Okay.
that a lot more, because
He gets a little arc, right? Where he goes from, like you said in the beginning, he's kind of chill about what's happening, which is what I had in mind, is that like he's just kind of laughs it off like whatever. And then later on in the story, he's like, now it's serious.
yeah.
You're not coming back from this almost.
So the situation, that, let's just say we go with Nathan getting hurt or dying. The situation that causes that is when they go to free Ash from the Tecton.
Yeah.
So how do we make it Jacob's fault? like what would Jacob do that would get somebody hurt? Maybe Jacob really wants to learn about the super AI. Maybe Jacob wants to, like, again, his desire for knowledge and power. Maybe he
Hmm.
realized, because does Jacob know about Big Ignis at this point? We'll call him Bigness.
I
Does
love
Jacob know
bigness.
about
Yes,
does
please.
does Jacob know about Bigness at that point in the story? Young
I think
Jacob?
he, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm at least in this new draft. In the original, he did not, but in the new one, I had it to where he realizes instantly once they're in his chamber that he's like, oh, you're bigness. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know
So
you. You know what I mean?
imagine if the reason that Nathan gets hurt is because Jacob can't walk away. He has to go to Bigness and ask questions. He has to be like, he's infatuated with this idea of the future. So maybe Jacob makes the group wait a little longer, and because of that, they get
Mm.
ambushed or something like that.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, yeah.
Just make it somehow Jacob's fault that Nathan gets hurt.
Okay, okay.
I think that's like the single biggest thing I would do there, because then
I
that
like
that,
that.
that again that gives you an actual bit of drama between Jacob and Marcus, because they can really
Right.
like Jacob uses people for this stuff. Like he is very
Yes.
he's he doesn't care about other. I mean, you could even take it further. Like maybe Jacob, like I don't know, Jacob has to do something immoral that leads to this problem, this
Yeah.
somebody getting hurt, and I think that would give you so much more weight.
I
Because
like
right
that.
now their banter in the second half consists of a lot of "oh shut up, we're gonna die, we're all gonna die," and then they make jokes about it, and it's
Of
like that's
course.
that's definitely that's very young adult fiction. That's very like,
Of
and
right,
I think
right.
that some of that's okay, but also like man, you could if you kill off one of the kids, that's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like it would change the mood at that point in the story. It
And
gets
then
more
and
intense.
yeah, and Jacob, I mean Marcus could have a real skin in the game at this point. Like thematically, he could have a real role to play if he
Yeah, yeah,
represents like he if he's the one who calls Jacob out, young
yeah.
Jacob, you know?
Right. I like that. No, absolutely, man.
Oh, okay.
And
Idea. So
tell
when
me,
they're
tell me.
freeing Ash, what if they have to sneak around the Tecton, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it's some stealth thing. Instead of a big firefight, it's a stealth thing. And they
Oh,
stealth
yeah.
Ash out and they're successful in stealthing Ash out. But Jacob can't just walk away because he sees maybe the machine or he sees Ignis, he sees something. And Jacob has to go check it out. And when he goes and checks it out, the Tecton becomes alerted, and then there's a firefight, and then the Tecton shoots Nathan.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
they, so they
I
could have
love
had
that
a
idea.
they could have had a clean getaway. They could have
Yeah,
had a clean getaway, but Jacob wasn't thinking about other people's safety. He was only thinking about his own need for knowledge and power, and then he causes um, the firefight where the Tecton shoots Nathan.
that's cool. I love that idea. Yeah, yeah.
Because
Or
then it's,
even
it's it's all Jacob's fault.
you could even make it to where it's like they're stealthing him out and Jacob finds a console and he's messing with it. This might
Yeah,
be a
yeah,
little
exactly.
goofy,
Oh my God,
but he
that's really
he
cool.
presses a button and it almost does put a spotlight right on Nathan accidentally, right? Like it's
Yeah,
and then the tech does like, what the hell's that? And he shoots him, and he's like, oh shit, I
yeah, I
shouldn't have
think
been
that's really
messing with
great
that. That'd be fun, man. I was also
because
gonna say
Jacob gets
because
carried away.
right, he gets carried away. I love that. And I was gonna say like when I read your feedback, especially about the kids at the beginning and all that, about adding more because at the time you were saying with Ash, right? But I was like, I can see what your criticism with him is that like his saying that line specifically, "You're a monster," feels like it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Um, and I was thinking, like to get your thoughts on this, but at the beginning of the story, when he first meets Jacob and them, because in the original draft, he knew Jacob from the get go, they were old friends. But in this
Yeah.
rewrite, I wanted it to be like this was technically their first meeting, right? Just so I can
Hmm.
introduce him better as a guy. But I wanted to make it in that where, or I was thinking about doing it with this new one, right? Where when they first meet him, I emphasize a bit more that all of these kids, even Hannah, when she's standing there talking to him, has a scar from some wacky invention Jacob made. Like they
Yeah.
all have a story. All the kids show their scars, you know what I mean? And then he's at that moment just kind of like, oh, this is kind of messed up. And they just laugh it off. Um,
Yeah, and you get that vibe, but again, they laugh it off. So I mean,
right.
there's no
Yeah.
real resentment. I wasn't picking up on any real resentment with those
That,
conversations.
okay. Well, and I mean that's good because yeah, I wanted it to feel like it's lighthearted at first and then it drops in serious tone later, right?
Yeah,
But I'm thinking if I do it with that scene first, and then when they go to his garage and he shows them the AI, I actually wrote it out originally and then I just took it out because I was like, I don't want to kind of give that away. But when I first wrote out these first 40 pages, I had it to where Ash kind of brought up, he was like, you telling me you don't know how to make a hoverboard, but you knew how to make an artificial intelligence? And Jacob just kind of goes, yeah, you know what I mean? Like he just also
yeah,
shrugs it off. What are your thoughts if I add that back in there just to kind of show that, like, from the get go, Ash has always been this kind of like center of truth. Like he just kind of sees past the bullshit because that's
yeah. I
kind of
like
what
that,
okay, okay.
and that gives
Because
him very much a purpose in the story too.
yeah, he as a character is constantly pointing out that reality that he sees in it, and so when he says that in front of the grown up version of Jacob, he calls him a monster.
Yeah,
And I get what you're
and
saying. He doesn't have necessarily trauma before, but I just wanted to show that he as a character already is looking around him at the environment and is like, this is a bad situation. Like this isn't good. And you're not going to
right.
make it any better, if that makes sense.
So
I don't
then
know what your
Marcus
thoughts are.
represents the emotional side of that coin, and Ash represents kind of the clarity side of that.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. That's a good way to put it. And that's the thing, is the other kids don't necessarily add to that. And I feel like they should, like you were saying. Um,
Well, I
if you'll
definitely
believe
feel
it,
like, yeah, I don't know. What's the point of Shyla and Trevor? Those two I was having a hard time placing.
I'll be honest, man, me too. Because I was gonna tell you in the draft before this, there were 14 kids, and I
Whoa.
chopped that. I know it's way too much, and they all didn't do anything. Way too much to try and like give them all personalities. So I got it down to, I think it's 8 now, right? But with those two, I am having a little hard time trying to figure out what they do. That is going to be an issue, and if it's too much, I think I can take them out.
Yeah, I mean, if
Literally,
they're
the
not,
only
because
reason,
we're talking about these characters, that bring something to the table. Like, what about Bella?
100%.
Because I think totally Bella should be like, there's a lot that Bella could do here. I don't just mean do like plot wise. I mean do for Jacob's arc. So if Bella is the one that I don't think, I
Because that's
don't
the thing.
know.
She gets shot, right? His
Yeah,
little sister Bella, and he's like feeling terrible about it, kind of. But I was in the original script. It's like she goes through that. She comes out of it. She gets a robotic prosthetic, like robot arm
wow.
from it. Um, I don't know if I'll add that in this one. I also had a whole thing where it's like that was traumatic even for her just to like go through that. She wakes up and she doesn't have her arm, and there was a whole sequence where she is like crying about it, and like he is just like, oh shit, like I really screwed up. Um, in this version though, you could have it like we were talking about, where it's like she is freaking out about it, and he's kind of like, it's cool, you got a robot arm. Why are you upset? I
Yeah,
don't know
because
if
he's
that's
kind of
too
he
far.
doesn't. Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I don't think he'd say it exactly like that
Right. Yeah.
because that seems a really like a little too tone deaf. But I think
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
he doesn't quite understand why it's traumatic to her. Like he's
Yeah.
so enthralled with this just like tech shit. He just doesn't like his excitement outweighs anything else he might have.
Any genuine fear.
Yeah.
Which I
So
like. I like you saying that right there. He is more. He's kind of like in nerd heaven, and maybe
he
I
is a
should
nerd, but he's
be
also,
more
I
of that.
think you can make him more of a dick, especially in the
Okay.
first half. Like I think the worse Jacob is, and he can still have likable traits. He can still be entertaining. He's got that sort of showy personality with his
Yeah.
inventions, and he's just a dork, and it's fine. But you could kind of subvert the idea of like the innocent, nerdy child and kind of make him a dark, nerdy child.
Okay.
Um, I
I
don't know.
like that
That's what I
idea.
would do with that. Just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
he has some underlying problems. He maybe has some power issues. He feels like he needs to get a leg up on people in that regard. I don't know. Bit of a
Mm,
chip on his shoulder, bit of a god complex.
yeah.
You can plant the seeds of that. It doesn't have to be, all the
In the
way out
front.
there,
Right. Right.
as it is with the Tecton, which brings me to like the Tecton's POV here. Um,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
so why does the Tecton kidnap Ash specifically and bring Ash into the room? What's the point of that?
Yeah. So I had this thing in the previous drafts, and it's in this one. It's just not at the forefront. It's just a little flavor to the time travel element. But it's this idea that every time he goes back into the past, because he keeps doing it right to get new batches of kids,
Hmm.
every time he does it, they react differently. They don't react the same way. And that at first freaked him out. Now he understands that there's kind of like a weird science behind it. There's a rhythm to the group. And so he's trying to calculate which is the most docile combination of the kids. Um, and that's why he freaks out this time around, because in all the other encounters, Ash has always been a real passive and scared individual. And when he comes back this time around, Ash jumps, like he gets really pissed off, right? And that
Yeah.
is one of the reasons he picks him up, because he's just like, you're different this time around. That's interesting. But also in his machine that he's trying to create, and I'm thinking about rewriting this in the script. I don't know if it's in there right now from what you read, right? But I added more to him, picking him specifically because he's kind of telling him like, I have this machine that can change reality. It needs data to do it, needs you kids.
Yeah.
And I need, the stronger the variation, the better results I'll get.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's why he's kind of like, I'm talking to you, Ash, because you are the strongest Ash I've seen so far. You're the biggest variant from the rest. And I
That's really
you help
interesting.
me. Okay.
So he's just yeah. I thought it was honestly one of like the coolest parts of this was the idea of using alternate versions of people to train an algorithm.
Oh, perfect, man.
Like that's just like that's really interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that done before.
Thanks, man.
Um,
Well, and I was inspired by all of this talk about AI tech, and I do like the
yeah,
idea of it's a play on, like with stable diffusion or all of this stuff where you have to put in sets of images in order for it to pull out a new image technically, right?
yeah.
That was my idea with this. I was like, what if it's a machine that can change reality, but it needs reality to do it? It needs proofs
Oh,
of
okay,
reality.
yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's
That's
a cool concept.
oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
So when you so Jacob wants to use he's collecting different variations of the kids, and when he gets enough data, what does he do with that? Does he physically go back in time and alter things, or is it like these kids are sort of a nexus event, like, and everything is rooted in this group of kids? So if he can like get a hold of the kids and he can base his machine on the kids,
Mhm.
um, I guess is he trying to get rid of other timelines, or is he
Yeah, I think he's because
like
again, I
before
haven't
he? I know he said he wants to kill Jacob by the end of the story, but like
or we'll
before that,
see.
for years and years, what was his goal? He wants to correct the past, right?
Right.
So what is the version of the past that he wants?
It yeah, yeah. So he's trying to correct well, because he's been doing it for a long time, right? And this is after Ignis has been locked up. In the original timeline, they did it for fun. Like they just wanted to make a time machine. He just wanted to because he's like, it's cool sci-fi shit, right? There's no
Yeah.
other thought behind that. It wasn't until Ignis became the problem and they had that big giant fight in the beginning, right? A lot of violence, a lot of death, and all that jazz. That he's like, okay, I need to fix that specifically. Take him out of the equation, have life be perfect, and me on top still, but without the AI. And this machine can
So
do that, if that
can he
makes
not
sense.
kill Ignis in the present?
I mean, he could, but it wouldn't like change his future
Yeah.
timeline. I think in his future timeline, all of his friends and family are dead from the event, and
Yeah.
that also weighs on
And
him.
what's the
He wants him
event?
back. The
What's the
well,
event?
okay. So I need to
How did the world end
I
in this other timeline?
right, right. And I need a really I'm probably going to take this part out because it's in the script currently. And right now, with what everything I'm describing to you, it doesn't factor into it. It adds too much complication, I think. But the way I had it originally, and even in the previous versions of this script, is every time the axiom itself would jump through time, it expelled a massive amount of power and energy, right? And that's what you see at the beginning of the story is he jumps into the past to change it. This was the okay. So it gets. I need to take all this shit out because it's too complicated, right? One of the earlier drafts of it, when he jumps into the past to try and fix it, he realizes that doesn't work, right? And that's where he realized that all the timelines are just separate. Like he can keep changing the past; it won't affect his past. But when he jumps back to his original timeline, everyone's dead. He didn't understand why, but then he's like, oh shit, it's the ship itself. Like it's that power it expelled when it jumped is what killed everybody. Again, another thing that he did, but he doesn't really want to take the blame for it, is what I originally had in mind. I feel like all of that is a little convoluted, though. I don't know what your
Well,
thoughts
I
are.
mean, if every time you jump, it destroys everybody in the universe, kills everybody.
Not even everybody. It just like makes an atom bomb size explosion. But the first time
Yeah.
he jumped, he was in his city, so he didn't. Now when he jumps, it's like he jumps outside in the middle of nowhere, so it doesn't kill
So
people.
does
Which is
he
why he's in
blame? So
Antarctica.
if Jacob's goal, if Tecton Jacob's goal is to erase Ignis from existence,
Yeah,
um,
and fix his homeworld, which is currently in ruins. It's
wouldn't it
flattened.
be better if Ignis somehow caused the destruction of his homeworld? Wouldn't that
I
give him
agree.
more of a reason to to
Yeah.
want to get rid of Ignis?
Oh yeah,
Um,
because you were saying that Ignis should be the one to do something,
yeah,
right?
because
Which I agree.
If Ignis causes the destruction of, again, like I don't know if this is the route you want to take, but
No, yeah, yeah.
if you could just unite Tecton's goal under like one idea instead of having it destroy Ignis because I don't like Ignis, but also save all my friends. Like, well, I feel like there's a way to unite that into one goal,
I agree.
um, which is to say that if you could find some way to make it so that removing Ignis from existence saves everybody,
Yeah, I
but
like that.
maybe he fails to realize that it wasn't Ignis that caused it. It was his treatment of Ignis that caused it.
Bingo, bingo. And I agree. I've been thinking about that too because again, I need to rewrite the opening, but I think it would be better to have it to where Ignis, once he found out that Jacob just wanted to lock him up, right? He didn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily go on a killing spree, but maybe he did something like that, or just like he freaked out, and him freaking out caused everyone else to get hurt, injured,
Yeah, it
whatever.
doesn't even have to be like Ignis's fault that everybody got killed. It has to be Jacob has to believe it was Ignis's fault.
There you go. Yeah,
So it doesn't have to be literally true. It just has to be like this is Tecton Jacob's goal is to erase Ignis from existence because erasing Ignis from existence would be how he brings back everybody
yeah,
in
I
theory.
like that. Right, right. In theory, um, but no, that's great.
So he's placing all of his rage onto Ignis when in reality it was his fault.
Exactly. Yes, yes.
And by
And
the
I
end, he
think that's
realizes that.
yeah. And I mean, I feel like at that point, at the end of the story, right? That's a good. I mean, you tell me if you disagree, but I think that that's a good moment for him to turn, right? Once he does come to grips
Yeah,
with
I
him
think it's
being at
it.
the center of it. Okay. Um, but I like what you're saying though, because I've been thinking about that specifically of like what with his past specifically, because again, there's remnants, holdovers from previous scripts of stuff that I really liked, and I don't know what works and what is kind of holding it back or just complicating it more than it needs to. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, but everything you're saying is great though, and I definitely do want that for the character at least.
yeah. Because I mean, it just I think if you blocked out Tecton Jacobs' entire life beat for beat, like up till that point, just so
Right.
you have it and you know exactly, all right, this is what has happened in his life. Um,
Yeah.
and then you beat out the rest of the story, the timeline that we're mainly in. That could just be helpful to just get like an order of scenes, just an
Yeah.
order of
Yeah.
moments, as opposed to throwing around these concepts like we are now. We could really boil it down into, just
Yeah.
a beat by beat.
No, for sure. Yeah. Cause then it would be it like it again, I keep going back to it, but in the original script, I did have that for the character. For the Tecton specifically, like I mapped out their timeline, the years that the events happen. And of course, I scrapped all that with this most recent edition of the script because I want it to feel, I don't know, like in the first one, I feel like it made logical sense within the world, but it didn't have any good weight to the emotion of the characters. They were worse off, if you can believe it, than they currently are.
Right.
They've improved more, which isn't saying much, but still, yeah.
So yeah, what exactly happened? Because I'm just gonna write this down in this notepad I got. Um,
Okay.
what happened in Tecton Jacobs' life? Like, Like when he was a kid, what did he
Mhm.
experience the exact same things that our Jacob was experiencing, more or less?
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing is, yeah, like because it and I don't have a point in the story where they explain this time travel specifically, but it is the idea that like when he's time traveling, he is going back into what looks like a complete facsimile of his childhood. So all of these events happen the way they did, except for the fact that he's there, right?
Yeah.
So in that original timeline, like the kids all hang out, they all had fun. Jacob grew up, went to college or whatever. Maybe he got in super early because he made an artificial intelligence. You know what I mean? Like he and this thing were on top of the world and they took over the world, if you
Yeah.
will. He was like Tony Stark, but without the charisma. Just the fact that Tony Stark had an AI but did more with it. I don't know. You know what I mean?
No, that makes sense. I think you could even show, well, I don't know, you could show him on that trajectory just to emphasize how much the Tecton's arrival is altering the trajectory, you know?
Yeah.
Like instead of just like, hey, I made an AI, I wonder what I'm gonna do with him. You could say, oh, he made an AI and he's already presenting it to different firms and he already has interest and he's already like he's getting calls from people. Like he's got, a government agent shows up at his house. Like, you could just show that
Oh,
like
that's cool.
serious stuff is happening as opposed to just kids, bickering over it. Like he could already be on his way to success. And
Oh,
then
that's interesting. Hmm.
or maybe you could have a government agent show up to the football field and get fried by the lightning. That'd be an interesting little conflict.
That'd be
Instead of just
hilarious.
they're hanging out, like you could
No,
create a
I love
moment of
that.
tension and then you could subvert it with an even more insane moment. Like you could think, oh, okay, so wait, the government is showing up at the football field to confiscate Ignis, and there's like vehicles, and it's like kind of a crazy scene. And then the Tecton like shows up and just like obliterates all of
Pulls
this.
them all.
Yeah,
That'd be sick.
and
Would
then kidnaps the kids.
damn that gets me thinking, right? And I'm just like, you could play up the douchebag factor even more with Jacob at this stage in his life where he's kind of like around his friends, like, yeah, I'm gonna be a big deal. You know what I mean? Like he's
Yeah,
already in the throes of leaving them behind. Maybe. I don't know if that'll work though. I think
I
that's
just think
kind
it
of
would it would
cool.
it would be more like for him to. It just has more teeth, I think, than they're all just
Yeah,
friends and they're chilling. Like if
of
you
course.
already start driving that wedge between them very early on,
Yeah.
you already show that the wedge is already there. Like you don't need to we don't need to see them just hanging out and being friends. We can infer that.
Okay.
Like if you introduce that conflict right away, I think it's fine. Like I don't need 10 pages of them just like
For sure. For
making
sure.
jokes with each other and having fun. Like everybody knows what that looks like. Everybody can like, piece together, oh, all right, kids, friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't need a
Which I
whole
like.
act of that.
Okay. Okay. I like what you're saying though. That's great.
Like when
So then,
Stranger Things had one scene of that. Like literally just one quick scene of the kids all, hanging out, having fun, and then immediately stir
shit
the
goes
pot
down
up.
with it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's all you need.
I like that. Um, hmm. Because I feel like this would require, which is fine, but I'm just trying to think out loud, right? Redoing the whole first act, which is great to me at least. I want to get it as best as it can be. Can I still keep a moment though? Like you said with that one scene of the kids interacting, and if so, what to you is fundamental? Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Because if we do that, like it would go from you have the opening sequence with the Tecton just to spice it right. People get to see that and be like, "Oh,
I like
scary
that.
robots." Okay, cool. Then it would go to a scene of the kids chilling, and then like what we're talking about here, which is a recondensed, re-energized version of the Tecton entering the scene. Um,
Yes. I mean, I'm not saying necessarily like I think we need to see conflict between the kids before the
yeah.
Texan shows up. Like, so I'm not
Okay.
just saying like, a little bit of hang. I mean, maybe Stranger Things was the wrong allegory to use. It'd be like, what if in Stranger Things there was the one scene of them hanging out and then they like started all fighting each other and then the sexual conflict kicked off. That's
Yeah.
more so what I'm talking about. I just
Okay.
you need some meat in that first first 18, 19 pages,
I get you. Yeah.
because I don't know, it's just like they just go from location to location. We're meeting new people and they're hanging out and they're bantering, and I don't know.
I
They
feel
use
you.
that time to, let's just say
Yeah.
hypothetically, we first meet Jacob doing his thing, doing his invention thing.
Yeah. With the
Um,
rockets, because I feel like that's a good introduction to his carelessness, right? He
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I
some
mean,
goofy
so
sequence.
instead of just having that scene be what it is and being
Right.
goofy, why don't you just lean into the serious element of it a little more? Why don't you actually like, how about a real argument breaks out between them,
Okay.
like an actual, like they actually don't like something he's doing or the way he's doing it. They feel like he's, putting them at risk,
Yeah.
and then there's an actual conflict between them, and it's not like a relationship ending conflict, but it's also not jokey and fun. Like it's an
Okay.
actual, that's what I would do with that first scene, just to really show that Jacob, he's a goofy, fun kid, but also he has an arrogance and he has a carelessness about him, and other people notice. It's not all under the surface. He
Yeah.
just he doesn't realize it, obviously, but people have a
Right.
problem with him. Um,
I
and then
like
after
that.
that, what's the scene right after that? They get in the truck and that's when you meet Hannah and Ash, right?
Yes. And then after that, they go to his garage, which is a scene like I feel like you can have, like originally that scene was longer because there was more dialogue of them talking about the ethics of this with him and him brushing it off. And then I cut all that out because I was just like, maybe that's a little too long. I don't know for this opening, but I don't
I
know.
mean, I'd
I
rather have that than the current what there is. Like, if you're gonna,
okay,
I'd rather have something there as opposed
sure.
to nothing of thematic substance. I think you should
I like
spice
that.
that up a little more. So, this interaction with Ash and Hannah, um, what could we add to that to make it better, to make it more relevant, um, to make it more
Yeah.
thematic? What changes could be made to that scene so that it better reflects the greater conflict and the greater themes of the story? You said they all have like scars from Jacob, right?
Yeah.
Or they all have memories of him, and
That yeah,
um,
yeah. Which again like I had that or I mean I thought of that after you brought up your thing because I was like, that's a there's a part of me that wants to keep it, I don't know. Because again, I want to introduce these issues, but what am I trying to say? Like I want it to feel a little subtle where you don't notice it at first.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? At least the
I feel that.
audience, so that if you on repeated rewatches, you'd be like, oh wow, he's already doing shit that's you know what I mean. Like I'm thinking even right now, going back to the opening scene, based on what you were saying about have it be, oh man, I don't know how this would work, but I
They can
thought,
all
what
still
if,
be friends. Like they can all still be like, friends bicker, friends fight. I was
right,
just
right,
saying, like, add a little more, like, make their arguments a little more real,
yeah,
a
or
little more serious. I think would go a long way.
because I was thinking like with that opening scene, instead of making it where it's at, I don't know, I do like that location, but what if instead it's like, what if he is showing this device to a board of investors, like you're describing almost, and so it's in front of a bunch of people, and he brought his friend to do it, and it's not a bottle rocket, it's something else.
Well, it could be literally just it could be the AI.
Or
And
that too.
it could just, instead of like, showing a smaller invention first, you could just get right into, the invention that matters.
Him
You
showing
could have
him,
him mention other inventions in passing, to show that he's an inventor. But, we get to the important thing.
no,
Okay, okay, okay. What about this? What
tell me,
about
tell me.
the first scene? He brings his friend to demonstrate Ignis.
Okay.
He brings Marcus or Nathan or Hannah or somebody. Um, but something goes wrong and they blame him. So after this meeting with the board of investors, they leave. Um, but there was also a stealthy government agent at the board of investors meeting who starts following them, right?
Okay.
And so then that little plot line, that we just see, we know there's somebody spying on these kids, but they don't know it yet. So they go back from the meeting and they're arguing like in the car. And then, they're arguing about how reckless Jacob is. And then we get their different perspectives on that. Like, and they're all still friends,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
that's why they're arguing is because they're friends. They wouldn't be arguing if they weren't. So
Right,
there's
right.
still, there's a love between them, but it's not like all happy and goofy. It's,
Hmm.
they're friends and Jacob is, cracking jokes, but the others are probably don't think it's that funny. That he, I guess maybe, I don't know specifically what he would have done during this meeting that would have pissed them off, but
Right, yeah.
something, just some, like, here, hold this, and it like burns somebody's hand, like whatever, I don't know.
No, it's true, yeah.
Just some small, kind of innocuous thing that puts somebody at risk. And Jacob just doesn't seem to care. And that bothers whoever else is with him, that bothers Marcus. This could be a smaller scale conflict of the Marcus. And then maybe Nathan, to represent a different perspective on this, maybe Nathan is there too. So maybe he's there with Marcus and Nathan. And he's
Yeah.
brought them along to this meeting. Marcus is the one who calls him out and is mad at him, but Nathan supports Jacob, right?
Yeah.
So Nathan is like, no, Nathan's like a little brother because Marcus and Jacob are about the same age, right?
Right, right.
Right.
Yeah.
And Nathan is kind of like he's the
A
little
wide-eyed
brother.
wonder.
Yeah, and he
Yeah.
just like he prefers Jacob. And you can create some drama with that. So,
Oh,
it's like, why are you
interesting.
defending him? Like, I'm your brother. What the hell? You get
I
that.
like that. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
then they meet up with Ash and Hannah. And then this is maybe when we see there's like a government vehicle trailing them. Um, and then they go to the football field. They have their little exchange there. You know,
Mhm.
we meet Hannah. And then this van shows up full of guys in suits, and they hop out, and they're here to confiscate the AI. And there's
Mm.
a whole exchange where we see Jacob and how Jacob responds to like a real conflict, like a display of, power. Because does he say no to these government agents? Like, we have to see the fire in Jacob, just a little bit. We have to see that
Wow.
capacity for that power, right? So
Yeah,
then these
yeah.
government agents, they're not having any of it. They're going to take him into custody, and at this point, it's like, oh, this is serious. What the hell? Um, but then the ship shows up and
Yeah.
just completely like, you know, hand waves the government agents like they were nothing. And then that's a perfect way to like show how advanced the Tecton's technology is
Yeah.
and show
Blows
like,
them off.
oh, okay, this is insane. Um, and so he could like kill the government agents or like turn them into, I don't know, whatever. And then he kidnaps the kids just like before.
Yeah.
So then, you still have a lingering tension between Jacob and Marcus. You have that argumentative that they never really solved that conflict because they were cut off, they were interrupted, and Jacob
Mhm.
never really wanted to have that argument. So then when then we return to that beat that I described earlier where they're sneaking around to free Ash, and Jacob again, he doesn't care about other people's safety, and it
Yeah.
causes Nathan to get hurt or killed, and then Marcus freaks out, and that's the climax of Jacob and Marcus's conflict. Is that moment?
Yeah.
But then it becomes precedented because we had a smaller version of the conflict earlier and we just didn't finish it. It was just like it's been building and building and building.
I like
The
that.
resentment between these two friends, and again, they're still friends. They can still talk like friends, and they can still. But there's a tension between them.
Yeah. That's good, man. I dig that. And
I
I
don't
and
know.
I
That's just
like
how I
that
would do
too.
it.
No, for sure. I'm with Marcus specifically because I want there to be a resolution where he and Jacob make amends, especially after I think that happens at the end after all of this shit goes down with, the final fight and then the final
Yeah,
reveal. Um, with his character specifically, I feel like he once young Jacob does see the shit that happened with his older self and the older Ignis and all this stuff. I think he, you know what I mean,
yeah.
apologizes too, and
He
even to
apologized to
Marcus,
Ignis, right?
to Ignis. But I feel like he should, if we keep the Marcus plot line in, I feel like there should be. I'd like to have a resolution between them as well.
Yeah,
There was a
no,
whole
for
bit
sure.
in the in the original script. There was a whole section too where it's like they again, it was there's a lot of back and forth with the draft before this one where they go to this part of the axiom and they keep going back and then they go back again. And one of the reasons I had them go back to that chamber was just to get Nathan's body because it's like they just kind of left it there. They had to run because of all the chaos. I don't
Yeah.
think I'd have that in this because it just adds too much to it.
Would you still kill Nathan off?
I would, but I'd have it to where like once Jacob and Ignis make amends, they hand him back. They get the body pretty much because I still
Yeah.
think that that's a not crazy, but I'm just like yeah, they're in that moment. It's like they can't just pick him up. They're like running from the fight.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe
And
I
if
don't know.
Nathan is the kind of person who will like willingly submit himself to Jacob's experiments, because he's like, if Nathan is Jacob's biggest fan, then
Yeah,
that just makes his death so much more heartbreaking because it was Jacob's fault.
I love that. Yeah, that's really cool.
And then that creates tension between, Nathan and Marcus, kind of a brotherly, like, you little dumbass, like, can't you see this guy's a bad influence? Like, man, shut up, you're not my dad.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then already you
No,
have such a deeper conflict between those three guys.
yeah. Which is why I wanted to keep them. But like you said, with Shyla and Trevor, I am still finding it hard to try and do something with them. It sucks, and I might I might kick them both out, or at least have one. I feel like at least having something to bounce off of Jacob, because when the group splits, right?
Yeah.
You got Hannah, the two brothers over here. You have Jacob and his little sister and the robot. If you take out Shyla and Trevor, it's fine, but then Jacob is just talking with the little robot the entire time, and I kind of wanted another human for him to bounce stuff off of, or at least to bounce stuff off of him. And that's, I mean, as of
What
right
about
now,
so
that's
what's Hannah doing? We could rearrange those groups. Like
we
we could
could.
do anything really.
No, that's true. We could take Hannah out with the guys. Yeah, I don't see why not. I just enjoyed that trio. They got a lot of, to me at least,
Yeah.
I don't know, energy. But if she's okay, so if she's with Jacob and Bella, uh, that could work. She
I don't
definitely
know. I
have
mean,
much
just you got to
more.
find whatever is the best way to generate. Because what does Hannah like represent here? What is she doing? What does she bring to the table?
Aside from, to me at least, being just a natural born badass in the narrative as it progresses, right? She
Yeah.
just is. I don't know. She's
I
cool
mean, I think she definitely has a place here. But
for sure. Yeah.
what? How does
I
she feel? How does she feel about Jacob? That's a good one. Because I mean, just
I
asking these questions about her. What is her perspective on all this?
I think she is aware that Jacob is a flawed human, but she likes him regardless, and maybe not in a romantic sense, but
Yeah.
she doesn't. I don't know because like the way we have it, and the way we've described it, and the way I think about it, like Ash doesn't necessarily hate the guy, but Ash just sees 100% bullshit and is just not a
Yeah.
fan. Marcus is on the fence until he's completely against him as well. So it would make sense to me that Hannah is the
Yeah, no,
one
I
that
think Hannah
is,
is the one who believes in him, right? Because you
yeah,
have all these characters have different perspectives on Jacob, and Jacob is the
yes,
protagonist. So
of course,
you need to explore what perspectives have we. I mean, you'd even incorporate Shyla and Trevor to this. What
yeah,
perspectives have not been explored on Jacob? You basically have Ash who sees through his bullshit. Um,
yes,
you have Marcus who is very much emotionally against Jacob, who
yeah.
Marcus is kind of angry about it. Then you have
And
um
I'd say in a sense, there's a bit of jealousy, right? Like you
yeah,
said, if we
over his
play that,
brother, yeah.
yeah, if we play that angle, then it is like he's kind of jealous of Jacob, not in the sense that he wants to be him, but like that, like it's his brother, and there's an entanglement in that area. I
Yeah, yeah.
like that.
So Marcus is, like that. And then you have
Uh,
Nathan who is just in denial about Jacob's problems. And so it would make
yeah,
sense. It would make
unhealthy
sense that
amounts.
Hannah, it would make
Yeah,
sense that Hannah is understands his problems, but also supports him. That's the one piece
exactly.
that's missing here.
Yeah,
So she should be
it,
fully oriented around that. And she can also just be a
I like
badass,
that.
but also
Yeah,
her
no, I like that
perspective on
idea.
Jacob and his conflict should be like, yeah,
She has the
she could be the one who who kind of brings him back to the light, who makes him, sort of see
Yes. Yes.
like because she's offering a realistic take on growth, whereas like Nathan is
Yeah.
just supporting him without really truly understanding him.
Yeah. Giving him
So
positive, constructive criticism in a way to help him grow. And yeah. And then Marcus at a certain point wants him dead, which isn't healthy
yeah,
either. The way I currently had, or at least in my mind, talking about slotting the Bingham siblings into it, right? Trevor and Shyla. I Shyla to me doesn't even have an opinion on Jacob, which is not a good thing. But Trevor does, and to me, in his mind, he just sees him as a nerd and like inferior, weaker than him. At least that's where I was going with it. I don't know if that's another differing perspective, but a character who just doesn't respect anything Jacob does.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Is that a
Well, I mean,
valid
okay,
point?
so no, I think that's a good that could be a good way to work it in. So think about this. Why is Jacob kind of this reckless, power hungry dude? Is because he kind of is insecure and he has like a bit of a nerd
Yes.
complex. So what
Yeah,
if
yeah.
Trevor is just full on a bully to Jacob?
Yeah. Oh, I like that shit. Yeah. Because then he has a purpose.
Yeah, then he
And
has a purpose. So
maybe
if
Jacob. Oh man. I was gonna say maybe Jacob almost kills him on purpose. Because that could add more to where Jacob has to like take a step back and be like, yeah, this shit's not going good
yeah,
for
because I
me.
mean,
I'm not.
even if Jacob is a little, Jacob has a bit of rot inside him and he's got some issues. That's
Yeah,
not to say that it's not, that it's all his fault. He could have just been like relentlessly bullied by people like Trevor his whole life, which leads him to become this like, all right, well, if I can't, beat you in a fight, if I'm not as popular as you, then maybe I'm just gonna become a god. Maybe I'm just gonna. So
that's
if
cool.
if
I like
coming
that.
after, like again, the reason for his insecurity could be Trevor and people like Trevor. Um,
Mm, that's
so you
nice.
could really play with that.
Yeah. Trevor isn't his friend
No,
almost. And
Trevor. How
then,
about Trevor is just there at the football field for a different reason?
okay.
Shows up to pick on him, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Shyla as a character, though, I mean, I can't think of something for her, though. Like I said, she
Well, I
doesn't
mean,
have an
you could
opinion on
have you could have
Jacob.
Shiloh and Trevor both kind of be bullies. I don't know.
Okay. Because I don't
You could
even mind taking her out of the story. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I can't think of something in the original script. There was a weird love thing between her and Marcus, which I also took out of. I wrote it in this one, and I took it out because I was just like, I really don't want to focus on that at all.
yeah.
But it didn't add. It just added more dynamics for their group. I don't know. There was a weird thing going on there, but right now she doesn't have anything with him. She doesn't do anything. In the original version, she like is scared for her own safety, and she almost gets everybody killed to a certain extent, which doesn't work in this one at all. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? She's not a focal point. I think it is better to just focus on Jacob as the source of everything. You know what I mean? The good and the bad in the narrative, if you will. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I don't know. She could also, like you said, if she plays a bully too, I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah. So right now we kind of just have Marcus is well, Nathan is like, a big fan of Jacob, doesn't see his flaws.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus is jealous of Nathan. Not without a good reason, but he is jealous of Nathan.
Of
Maybe
course.
Marcus could be kind of just not as good in school. Marcus could be kind of a dummy. Marcus could be kind of like
Yeah.
kind of a loser in that sense. Or maybe they used to be nerd friends, but now Jacob is like taking off and Marcus feels kind of, you could really do a lot with
Oh,
Marcus's jealousy.
I like
Um,
that. Yeah.
and then you got Hannah who still sees Jacob's flaws, but supports him. You
Yeah.
got Ash who sees through Jacob, but doesn't say anything about it.
Yeah. And also doesn't try and help him as a character. Like he's not proactive like Hannah,
Yeah.
but
What
he
if
is, yeah. Tell
yeah,
me.
imagine, I mean, Ash, I don't know. It doesn't, he, if Ash is like seeing through Jacob's bullshit, I mean, that kind of makes him like Marcus.
It does, yeah.
I
But
mean,
Marcus has a rude awakening. Like I mean,
yeah,
that, or at least that's the way it was going, right? Where it's like Marcus is his friend, and he's kind of begrudgingly going along.
yeah.
Then at a certain point, he's like, no, absolutely not.
What if
Um,
imagine just a
oh,
hypothetical scenario here where like Ash is not in the story and Hannah is the one who gets kidnapped instead.
okay, okay,
Imagine like the dialogue there. Because I mean, right now the way you have it is Ash gets kidnapped and his response is basically, "Oh my God, how are you, Jacob? This is crazy."
yeah,
And he, of course, he says the thing about like you would not be like right to have this power and
yeah.
whatnot. But I don't know.
I like that. No, I
Because
mean
there
that
are
could
other ways
work.
you could play that. There are other ways like who's the best possible person to talk to Tecton Jacob? Um,
Yes,
I think it could
that
be
is the
Ash. Like I'm not
question.
saying Ash isn't bringing anything to the table. Ash is a cool character, and
No,
Ash
but
definitely has a unique angle. But
I like
there are
what you're
other ways
saying
to
though.
do it if you want.
Yeah, yeah. Because if we do, then yeah, it would say you take Ash out and you also take Shyla out. Because again, I can't think of anything for her to do. So let's just say they're both out, right? We keep
Yeah,
Trevor because he's got an interesting perspective. I think that can add more fuel to Jacob's fire. Um, and then yeah, you have the two Marcus and Nathan are out to rescue Hannah
yeah.
primarily. Maybe I'd throw another angle in there. I don't know how you feel about this, but maybe Marcus secretly likes Hannah too, and that also adds to his jealousy.
Oh yeah, no,
With
I for sure. I mean,
yeah,
jealousy, like just it can compound in a million different ways,
yeah, yeah,
and all of that is made a little more interesting if Marcus is still a bit edgy.
yeah,
If he's like
and
if you keep him a bit edgy instead of him just being a loser, that could
I
be really
like that.
interesting because he has a big tough exterior, but in reality, he's kind of falling apart, and
One
his
I like,
his sense of identity is kind of crumbling.
yeah, man, I like that too because then when they confront the Tecton, they have him cornered right before like it. I wanted it to be where there's a firefight, Nathan's killed, Marcus gets enraged, and then he goes after the Tecton. They square off, and he's about to murder him because he's just super angry. And then that's when Ignis is released, and he gets control of the clones, and that stops them from
Yeah,
continuing. Right, so they all run because that's just like the next big threat is all these clones. They get out of their pods of all the kids, and they're chasing after them.
yeah,
But um, I think there'd be good thematic weight then if Hannah, who's not only the one who's talking to Jacob, is the one that she gets in between him and Jacob, the older Jacob, even. She's like, don't do it, Marcus. You know what I mean? Like, this
yeah, yeah,
isn't going to
yeah.
be
Because
good. You know what I mean?
she still sees good in Jacob.
Exactly. I like
Um,
that.
if that's the point of her character, I like that a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. I
And
think
then
so. Yeah.
yeah, and then there's Bella. Bella, to me, I think she's just like she's the person I think she'd be in a position best served to the story if she maybe like Jacob kind of neglects to protect her and then maybe learns to protect her over the course of the story. You know,
I like that. Yeah.
like if she could you can make her a lot younger. I think
Yeah.
you can make her like a proper little kid, which just
I like
makes her
that.
more vulnerable. You know, and
And
if
also shows
Jacob
that
has to learn to protect her.
yeah, like, and he doesn't care for her that much naturally. Like, he's just kind of
Yeah,
like, oh, my annoying little sister. Right.
right.
And then it gets serious. And then he's like, oh, I gotta do, maybe that's the start of his, I don't want to say his arc, but you know what I mean? Like, that's the
Yeah,
first thing he cares about where he's like, I gotta do something about this shit because I haven't. I don't know.
yeah.
I
Just
like what you're
having his
saying
little
though.
sister there. I mean, it provides a way for him to learn about responsibility. And yeah, I'm not saying like hurt her or kill her off because that
No,
already
of
happens with the
course.
separate thing with Nathan. But
Right.
he could really he could learn from these other experiences that he's having,
Yeah.
and he could start to prioritize her. And I don't know. I like her. I like her being there because it just
I like
amps the
that
stakes
too.
up so much.
Yeah. Well,
And
and
I
I
think
like
definitely
everything
got
you're
to make her
saying
younger
too.
and more vulnerable would make it more
That's
impactful.
perfect. That's a perfect idea. I love that. Well, and also like what was I going to say to that specifically? I feel like her how do I say this? Because again, like all of them are kind of they all have opinions on Jacob, right? Which I like
Yeah,
this. It helps me frame these characters a lot more that they're all different factors of this. They play into it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, And I do like this idea too, that like her opinion on her big brother, right? What's that like? Because again, I
She
think
could
her
be caught
having
in the
that,
middle, honestly. Her being like caught in the middle, like, on one
yeah,
hand, she wants to idolize him. But on one hand, she's got, Marcus talking into her ear, like, oh, your brother's an asshole. She doesn't
oh, I
have to have a
like that.
definitive perspective. She can kind of just be wishy-washy on him. And then Jacob sort of has to prove himself to Bella over the course of the story. Like
Oh, that's
prove that
cute.
he's gonna put her first and he's gonna be a capable older brother.
That's great. I love that. Yeah.
So I mean, not every character has to have like a super clear perspective as long as they're somewhere on the map, as long as they're somewhere on the flow chart and they're caught between perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think that would be definitely a good thing for
Oh, I
Bella.
love that, dude.
It's kind of on
Yeah.
a pendulum. So
Right.
she's an
Yeah.
erratic little kid.
And I like what you're saying specifically about he's got to work to change her perspective. He's got to put in
Yeah.
the effort because he
She could
realizes that he
see
hasn't.
she could maybe see when Nathan gets killed, and that could really like that could turn her against Jacob for a little bit too. She could be really angry with him. He's like, oh well, would you just let me get killed too?
Mm, I
Yeah, a
like
lot of
that.
ways to play that.
Yeah. Even to have it where like she she sees the Tecton as a monster straight up.
Yeah.
And maybe when she finds out that it is Jacob, that messes with her as well.
Oh, okay.
You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah, yeah.
mean?
Or
That
like,
could be cool.
you could even have a sequence where, Kekton is like chasing her or, something. I don't know. And
Yeah,
then it's interesting.
that'd be wild. And I like that too because it reminds me at least a bit. It's my favorite scene in this movie, but in Monsters Incorporated, I love the scene where Boo finds out that Sully's a bit scary
Oh,
for the
yeah. No,
first
that's great.
time. Yeah, that scene is like gold to me,
Oh, yeah.
thematically speaking, just emotionally. I'm like, shit, that sucks. Because he's put in a tough spot in that movie, right? And he
Yeah.
reacts as he should as a monster. And she's like, oh no, like that changes her perspective on him. I kind of like
Yeah. I
would like
forgot
to
how
have a
great that
scene.
was.
Yeah, man. I'd love to have
Totally
it
agree.
play
That's
out
I
like
think
that.
that's definitely where Bella I think sits on this. I mean, she's probably a little
Yeah.
older than like the toddler
Of
who,
course, she wouldn't be
but
that young, but
she's old enough to communicate her feelings. But
yeah, yeah. I love that.
yeah, no, I think that's your cast there.
That's perfect,
I
man.
think yeah, Trevor definitely belongs in the story. If you're gonna make him like, and
Antagonizing.
honestly, creating a dynamic between Trevor and Jacob where Trevor is just always we have to see that play out in real time. We have to see that Trevor is causing Jacob's insecurities,
Yeah.
right? So how do we reveal that to the audience?
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Does he enter the story antagonizing Jacob is my question.
I
Because I
think
feel
that's,
like,
I mean, yeah, if that's going to be his
yeah,
purpose, then why not?
yeah,
He
yeah.
shows up at the football field and he's already, making fun of Jacob. He's already, laughing at him, deriding him. And then Jacob has some comeback that, reveals how Jacob responds to this. So maybe, when Jacob is put in a corner, his first response is to, learn more and get more power. That's how he responds to his insecurities. You can see it all play out in a microcosm.
That's cool. That's cool. I like
So
that.
Trevor sort of almost created Jacob.
Yeah, yeah.
He's the reason
Almost.
for his personality.
Maybe we can add Shyla back and completely redesign her character from the ground up, um, to where she is not related to Trevor at all. But what if she's his girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
And in the story, like you said, he's bullying Jacob, and she's just kind of along for the ride, and she's that buffer for a bit between them of being like lay off of him, like don't be mean to the kid. He's just a kid, right?
Yeah.
Which also can play into his insecurities. But towards the end of the story, the change for Trevor's character is that Jacob, through his smarts and intelligence, saves Shyla, and then Trevor respects him because he's like, okay, you know what I mean? Like saves her from a
Yeah.
dire situation, and he's like, well, thank you. She could have died. I care about her.
I like that. Or he could just straight up save Trevor.
He could do that. That could work too. Honestly, yeah. Could
I mean,
take
either
her
I
out of
mean,
the equation.
yeah, and
You
you
know?
have like a morally complicated story here because it's like, Jacob is by no means like he's not a great person, but also Trevor
Yes.
isn't. So when he saves Trevor, you have to make it clear that it's not like Trevor. I mean, in Trevor's own head, yeah, he's gonna stop bullying Jacob, and that's the point of that interaction. Is like, you know, Trevor sees that Jacob isn't, all bad, and that there's some worth to him. Um, but you could even get you get deeper with that. I guess also when that happens matters too, because does this occur
Right.
prior to Jacob? Like at what point in the story would you do that?
Uh mm, in terms of him saving Trevor,
Yeah,
I mean, definitely right before the big, because there's a moment where the kids, man, I'm trying to figure out. I would want it to be before the final conflict. I feel like
yeah,
everybody should be on the same page by that point.
yes,
You know what I mean? The
yeah,
only ones that aren't are, of course, Jacob and the Tecton, because this is the final, like, him clashing heads. Um, so it would be before that, is all I can say. I don't know. That would require a little tweaking
yeah. I know. Yeah, there's totally a good place to work it in.
for sure.
I
Because
mean, we
there's a
haven't really talked about Jacob and the Tectons. Sorry, you were going to ask something.
no. I was just gonna add, like, it would be in the section where the kids are being chased by the clones. I think would be the best point to put something like that, right?
Oh yeah, no, I think so. I think
Maybe.
if what if Jacob finds some way to control the clones, with his
Oh
tech
yeah,
powers, or like he
yeah.
taps
There
into
you go.
something, or and then
Yeah,
Trevor maybe
severs Ignis's
realizes,
connection.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
you
I
could
dig
even
that.
set that up way earlier, like way back at the very beginning. You could say if Ignis is the one controlling the clones, then just throw in a little line about, oh well, he even has the power to like control organic matter through this combination of whatever the hell,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then that comes back later, or there's a way to sever the connection.
That's
What if
cool.
the board meet the investors are like, wait, that sounds really bad, and Jacob is like, no, 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 it's easy. You can sever the connection by introducing a magnetic field or whatever the hell. So it's super easy to fix,
Oh, that's cool.
and
Oh,
then it
that'd be
actually
cool
comes
then if
full
that.
circle at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, at the beginning you introduce that he's using Nathan as the test subject for that to show this kind of
Oh
body controlling
shit!
tech.
Oh my god!
That would
Wait,
be sick.
that's
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be rad.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
so much better than just burning his hand. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
oh, and Nathan is like a willing test subject because he's so like into
Yes.
Jacob. He idolizes Jacob. And Marcus is like, what
Yes.
the actual fuck are you doing?
Yes, I love that. Oh, that's rad, man.
Okay, yeah, that's an awesome
That's where
idea.
it's at. That's where it's at right there. It's perfect.
And the fact that it happens once, and so even the controlling of the clones is precedented earlier in the story. So it
There you
doesn't even
go.
come out of nowhere. Like we just see it on a
Yes.
smaller scale at the very beginning. And maybe
Yes,
it's
with
not
just
even full
him.
mind control. Maybe it's just like Nathan's arm or something. Maybe it's just like,
Exactly.
so it doesn't have to be terrifying. It can just be
Oh,
very small scale. And then
that
we
shit's
see,
rad.
Bigness does that later with not just a full body, but hundreds of full bodies.
Hundreds of full bodies. 100%, man. Oh,
And
I love
that
that
also
so
speaks
much.
to just how much Ignis has evolved and how much more
Yes.
powerful he's become. So it's just a linear progression. You show things like in a small way at the very beginning, and then once the audience, I forget, just like acclimates to that, to these small concepts, then you ramp
Yeah.
them up at the end. Except
I
everything
love
is
that.
already people already know. It's just like when I
Yeah.
when I talked to like in the Avatar video, I was like, they just show literally everything that comes into play in the final fight. They show like just a little bit
Right.
of it earlier, so then you
You
know
get to see the
exactly
little
what everything.
tidbits.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really smart way of doing it.
That's
But
rad, man. I love that. Oh, that already my brain is going off because I know exactly how to play that scene. That sounds so fun, man. That's
yeah,
sick.
no. So what I was going to ask
Thank
was,
you. Yeah, yeah.
Jacob and the Tecton, what does their interaction look like? This is like, this is you from the future. So at this point in the story, does Jacob see where he went wrong or not?
Yeah.
When their confrontation begins. Again, I haven't read this stuff because it doesn't exist in the draft you gave me. But
Of
how
course,
does
right.
that? Do they all walk into a room and the machine is going off? And I don't know. What does this interaction look like between Jacob and the Tecton?
Hmm. I'll say this: it's still the jury's out on that one. I'm still trying to like pin it down because again, like I've his interaction with the Tecton, I've rewritten this section several times and in different ways, right? So I'm trying to feel out the best one for this version of the story. Because there's a part of me that's like maybe, oh, because originally I had it to where like Jacob, there's a draft of this where he doesn't even interact with the Tecton at all. He doesn't even see his face. He doesn't believe the kids when they tell him that like it's him from the future almost, right?
Yeah.
But then there's another version before that where it's like they did interact and they had a full head to head confrontation, and I like that
Well,
more.
I like that Jacob denies it too. I think you'd have both. Like they could
Yeah,
interact, but just not see his face. And then they tell Jacob, no, you're gonna be evil in the future. That's future you. And he's like, no, me? What? Like that makes
yeah,
sense for him.
and I think that could work in this because I want that moment for Jacob where he like knocks his helmet off or whatever. He gets the upper hand and then he sees himself and it messes with him, makes him
Yeah, and
stumble.
he realizes, the road he's going down.
Yeah,
So I
and
mean,
the
this
older version,
confrontation, yeah, this is when
yeah, I
he
was
learns. This is when he
right.
realizes where he went wrong with
Yeah,
Ignis.
and he's able to see it, and his older self of course isn't. I'd say like he takes advantage of that moment where his younger self is freaking out to try and kill him, right? He's like, I
Yeah.
got the upper hand in the fight now, bitch. Then right at that moment is when Ignis jumps in, third party, right? Bigness, I
Yeah.
mean, Bigness jumps in, really does, tear shit up at that point. But
It's cool.
that's my thought at least for it is that,
Do you want to show the that cold open? Do you want to like show it in its entirety, like again and later in the story, or do you just want to like imply that that's what's happening?
I do kind of like, and especially because it's, an animated format, I think it would be cool to see maybe not the actual fight, but definitely
You could see the Tecton just
flash
take off
cuts.
running, you know?
Yeah, both take off running, but I do want to show that interaction between him and Bigness from the past. Because I feel like that's crucial. Is
Yeah,
this
no,
moment where they're
I
talking?
agree.
Yeah, and he's
Bigness
yeah.
could even like play recordings of their past, you know?
Oh, that'd be
Bigness could
cool.
show what went down.
A little hologram projection, a
Yeah,
little video somewhere
I'm
shows
sure he's
up.
fully
That would be
capable of
nice.
that. Wouldn't be a stretch at all.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, 100%. Like maybe even his little red eye shows a hologram 3D view for all of them to see of them
Yeah.
interacting or something. That would be cool. But yeah, I'm thinking of that, or at least for the confrontation between Jacob and the Tecton, right? The bad version of himself. When they're fighting, they're it's like they hit the on button for his machine. Also, I
Yeah,
kind of yeah, and
that's a
you
really cool set piece, and because you see like alternate realities, like waves of reality hitting them, and like that can be
yeah.
super visually cool.
I also had this visual idea, right? This might be a little hard to explain, but I wanted it to be like the machine cracks, and when it does, they themselves split. But so like Jacob's center frame, right? And it's like you
Yeah,
see these afterburn images right next to him of himself, and it's like it looks like a weird kind of holographic echo effect on both sides of him. Because I want
yeah.
you have you seen that experiment that they did with was it photons or whatever? They like shot it at a
No.
divider and it split the beam, and then it like on the wall there's like lines of this beam, and that's where they realized like if you stare at it, photon will either go left or right, but if you don't stare at it, it goes in all directions at the same time, and that's kind of
No,
this
oh
whole
yeah,
theory
that
of like
quantum like observing thing freaks me out. I don't
exact.
understand it at all.
Yeah, it is terrifying, but I wanted this to visually kind of look like those strips that are on the wall of all you know what I mean, like the idea
Yeah,
that all the quantum lines are. I wanted you to see that visually when they fight each other, and then Jacob uses that to the young version understands kind of what's going on, and he uses that to visually trick the other Jacob, gets the upper hand on the fight. Maybe
that's
that's where he
cool.
knocks the helmet off. I don't know, but yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can do that. As
hundred
long as you
percent.
hit the right beats in the scene, like you could play it all kinds of different ways. But this is, this whole thing is just about Jacob realizing his own flaws. Like that's the point of this story is
Yes.
young Jacob and also old Jacob. So what happens to the Tecton at the end of the story? You said that he has a moment where he comes to terms with everything that he did wrong.
Yeah.
But how does that? Because he also has his big fight with Bigness. So
Yeah.
How does the Tecton story wrap up?
Yeah, I wanted, in earlier drafts, Jacob kills the old version of himself. I don't like that for this. I feel like it should have a more redemptive arc. And I want to show that his old version and the old version of Ignis or Bigness, they kiss and they make up,
Yeah.
in a sense, right? And they tell the kids, like they drop the kids off and they're just like, we're gonna go and fix the mess we made. And they both kind of acknowledge that this is a shared joint effort, right? And then they do leave. Like I want them. I had another version where it's like the kids end up going to the future timeline that's described as a hellscape, but when they go there, it's actually a nice, beautiful memoriam that Jacob and Ignis made. You don't see them; they're like
That's
dead,
really cool.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll add that or not, though. I think it'd be
Kinda like
sweet.
that.
Yeah, because it's like you'd see a big statue of them both, right, at a memoriam where they're gone
Yeah.
completely, and there's people there, and it's full of life. I think that might
Yeah.
be nice.
That is
I
cool.
might add that as like a not a post credit, but you know what I mean, like a
No, I hear you.
I don't know, possibly. But I feel like it would wrap up nicely if it is just like you see them leave, almost like
Yeah,
the
they're
end
gonna
of
fix things. That's fine. I
yeah,
mean, they can be ambiguous. Doesn't really matter how they fix things. Just that they have the intent to fix things is enough.
exactly. And I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, those are at least my thoughts for it. I feel like I said, the meat and bones is pretty much there. I just need to finish it. But all of this, adding all these elements, man, really
Yeah,
does
and
help
I can
me.
send you these recordings.
Oh my
I'll
God,
throw
if
them
you could.
in Google Drive. They're all really small because they're super compressed and the audio quality isn't great. That's just how Zoom works. But
Damn shame. No, but I mean, you've helped me out immeasurably. I can't tell you how much, man. But
yeah,
this is
man.
great.
Yeah. No, I my pleasure. I love doing this. Love talking about this stuff. I got to get out of here in a few minutes.
Understandable. No, of course. But I really do appreciate it, man. And if I can just say real quick, like when you first gave me your first round of revisions, I was like, man, he really does. You were already tapped into the story. When you brought up, everything about the you're like, it seems crazy to me that this kid would build an AI. And I was like, that's perfect. Like you're already zoned in on the narrative.
Leaning into how insane it is and just like,
yeah,
I think
man.
it totally fuels his ego and just like, I don't know, just being okay with making Jacob a darker character from the start, I think was the key to
100%.
all this.
I love that. Yeah.
Because I think you got something that has a lot of potential here. So I will definitely await this next draft. This is gonna be very exciting to see how it changes.
I'm stoked, man. But again, thank you. Look forward to it, keeping you up to date with what happens next on the next draft of this narrative. And yeah, man. Let me know what happens with your projects for sure. So I totally get it.
No, I think about like, if I want to be a filmmaker, the fact that I'll probably only, if I'm lucky, I'll get to make like 9 or 10 feature films in my entire life is like, oh my God. Like this process is not something that you can just do forever. Like you have a finite window of time and resources and you have to pick your projects carefully.
That is very true, man. Yeah.
So that, it's just always on my mind. That's fun. But yeah, dude, this has been enlightening for me. I'm really eager to see what happens with your story. So
thanks, man. Same here. I'm excited. For anyone listening to this, thank y'all for sharing in on the process.
Oh yes.
And yeah.
Try dude. All right, well, take it easy.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Yep, have a good one.
Rest of your day.